Unit of work, we're going to be looking at learning to use Adobe Illustrator. Illustrator is part of the Adobe suite and works alongside Photoshop. So many of you would have used Photoshop. The key difference here is in Photoshop you were dealing with raster graphics or pixelated graphics. That meant a picture made up of lots of tiny dots. In Illustrator, we're going to learn to use this thing called vector graphics, where the computer understands the graphics as a series of mathematical lines rather than a series of dots. So let's jump straight into Illustrator and we can start to see why we'd use things like that. So on this image here, I've got the letter A that I've just imported as a JPEG, and then I've just typed the letter A in Illustrator. Now what this means is, as I zoom in, you'll be aware that things will pixelate, they'll become blurred around the edges. So we can start to see all the tiny dots coming out here. And of course I can get a higher res image so it doesn't pixelate, but the great thing about Illustrator is however much I zoom in, it will not pixelate it, it just understands that as a straight line. Okay, jumping into what we're going to be producing today. So in the first set of tutorials you're going to do, this one should take you about 10 to 20 minutes most likely, and we're just going to look at how we control shapes, how we can control the fill colors, the outline, and how we can move things around. You'll notice already there is a massive amount of tools on Illustrator, so we need to start just finding our way around the screen. First thing I'm going to do, and this is what you'll be presented with when you open Illustrator, is we need to open a new screen. So when I open a new screen, for now, just go with A4. So it won't necessarily tell you it's A4, but we want something 210 by 297 millimeters. It doesn't matter too much at the moment. We'll go more into that in later tutorials. So I've created a new document. The white area just is the area that will print. I can still draw over here, and I'll start to show you how we can do that. Now the very first thing I want you to do is just to draw me a rectangle. So I've clicked on the rectangle tool. I'm going to click, I haven't released the button, I'm going to drag it to the size I want, and I'm going to release the button. Hey presto, we've drawn a rectangle. The next thing we're going to do, now there are so many tools in Illustrator that we have to group them. So all the shape tools are grouped. When you see this tiny little corner arrow here, that means there are more tools underneath that tool set. So if by right clicking this, sometimes it's a left click and drag, I'm using a Mac, so if you're using a PC it might be slightly different. I'm going to select the ellipse tool and I'm just going to click and I'm going to draw an ellipse. Okay, so I've drawn two shapes, nothing that exciting so far, but we need to start somewhere. I'm now going to have a look at the select tool, and there's two select tools. I only want you to use this top black one today, the selection tool, rather than the direct selection tool. We'll come to this one in the next set of instructions. Now, I can change lots of things about these. The first rule is it needs to be selected. So I'm just going to move this out of the way a bit, let's pop it down there. And I've got a whole load of color swatches up here, some properties down here. The first thing I'm going to look to control is the outline and the fill color. So in this area here, this denotes the stroke or the border color, and this denotes the fill color. Depending on which one is to the front, so I toggle between the two, depends on which one I'm going to adjust. So I'm going to give my square a red outline, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to increase the stroke plate. Yours might appear up here. Your Illustrator screen might be laid out differently to mine. Don't worry about that. I'm now going to change the fill color. We've obviously got all the colors up here, but it's far easier for now just to go for a color over here. Okay, so I can control the border and the fill color. I'm now going to do the same with this, just give it a different color. So let's just choose something, there we go. And I'm just going to leave the border color on that one black. Okay, now under here you'll notice there isn't a circle tool. So the next thing we're going to learn to do is by using the ellipse tool, I'm going to draw an ellipse, but on my keyboard I'm holding the shift key down. And what that will do is lock the aspect ratio. That means that it will get as wide as it does tall. Okay, now you'll notice that when I drew a new shape, it defaulted to whatever the last set of properties I chose was. Now, with this selection tool here, I can change shapes. You'll notice straight away though, I'm already taking it out of being a circle. So if I want to keep it a circle, keep the Shift key down. Remember, if you make a mistake, you can just Control Z and undo. And you can do multiple undos like that in Illustrator. Photoshop's slightly different with how you undo things. Okay, so this select tool here is for moving objects around and changing the sort of shape and scale. I'm going to choose to have no outline on this shape. So if I look down here, I've got three options. I can have a color, I can have a gradient, I'm going to come to that later, and I can have nothing at all. So I've turned off the outline now, so there's nothing there. I now want to put another circle over the top of this, and I'm just going to do just a quick effect. And notice I can draw off the screen. All this means I can draw over here. It's no problem, it just won't print. This is the area that will print, that's all that means. I'm going to bring this down over here. Now I'm going to change this to white. Oh, so what I've done there is I've changed the outline, not the fill colour. So I can just swap the two over here, but I don't want it to have a red outline, I want it to have no outline. So with that toggled, I'm just going to change that. And holding the Shift key down, I just want to create a quick effect just to give me a bit more of an interesting sort of shape that I can create just by combining two shapes. Now, if I want to move or resize multiple objects, I can do that by clicking, dragging, and whatever I click, whatever I clip, I will select. So whereas in most Microsoft, things like PowerPoint, you have to completely surround the object to select it, as long as you clip it, you'll select it. Now holding the Shift key down, I can scale both of these at the same time. I select them again, and I'm just going to move this over here. Okay, next thing I want to do is, you'll notice as I move around the screen quite often, different sort of arrows are coming up. So I'm going to click this back to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to just create 3 rectangles in a row, getting slightly smaller as they go. And I want these to be black without an outline. So I'm going to toggle to the fill color, I'm going to select black as the fill, and I'm going to turn the outline color off. So when I draw another one of these, it should become the same. Now see these little pink lines, you might have to turn them on, but these are just guides, so I can just line things up nice and neatly. And all I want you to do here is just create me a bit of an effect with just the 3 lines getting smaller. Okay, that's all I want you to cover in the first tutorial, but just a few areas where you might get stuck. If I double click on an object, it takes me into layers, and all of a sudden I can only work on that object. So if you've accidentally double clicked and this appears up here, it's 1, 2 clicks to get back out of it. We'll come to layers later. The other thing that can happen to you, if this is off and this is off, and you're trying to draw shapes, you're drawing and you're going, it's not working every time it vanishes. It's not vanishing at all, they're all there. So if I was to do a select, I can see they're all there. It's just they don't have a fill color or an outline color. And if I turn it on, you can see all the shapes. So a couple of sort of pitfalls you might fall into. Okay, so the final thing I want you to do is, once you've drawn these, we want you to keep a record of your progress. So you are going to create me a Google document that shows what you did during that tutorial. Remember, you'll get through a few of these in one lesson. So do a screenshot, tell me what tools, the 3 tools that you used, and tell me how you created each of the shapes. If I just flip up to here, just to remind us, these were the 3 tools we used in the lesson. We used the Select tool, the Shapes tool, and the Borders and Fills tool. Remember, there are more tools under the Shapes tool, so you have to right click and get those out. And this is what I want your first tutorial to be. So I want a green square with a black outline, a red oval, 3 black rectangles getting sequentially bigger, and 2 circles, one hovering over the other. And let's make the back one blue. Excellent. Look forward to seeing it.